Now, I think a big problem we need to address with the show is that no matter if Jaime going back to Cersei makes sense narratively or not, the execution was really rushed. And I think to make the impact and believability of this choice resonate with audiences, this decision truly needed to unfold more gradually. The speed at which we have to accept this choice from Jaime occurs in episode 4 of season 8. In the same episode that Jaime and Brienne finally come together romantically, only just a few short scenes later, Jaime is running out on Brienne in the middle of the night, doing a complete 180 on his character arc. But that's where I think we need to focus. This perceived 180 of his character arc is just not really true. Jaime is a great example of the human heart in conflict with itself, the guiding principle for how George R. R. Martin likes to write his characters. You see, in the show, I believe so much of Jaime's redemption arc is tied to his romantic connection between Jaime and Brienne, and I believe a perception of Jaime's more vile side and what he is being redeemed from is his relationship with Cersei. So the show makes this internal conflict much more digestible in a lot of ways by making it simply a good and redeemed Jaime chooses Brienne, and a bad and ill-fated Jaime chooses Cersei. So in the show, when Jaime chooses to go back to Cersei, this symbolizes to audiences that Jaime's redemption has been undone. It's very black and white, a binary choice between good or bad. But Game of Thrones is adapting a story from A Song of Ice and Fire where all characters are considered morally gray. The good characters are capable of doing bad things, and the bad characters are capable of something good. Things are much more nuanced and complex. There's no true hero. There's no purely evil villain in this regard. We're not telling the story of a standard hero's journey. Even in the show, Cersei's walk of atonement and her conflict with the High Sparrow actually does a good job at demonstrating this, with some audiences feeling Cersei's attack on the High Sparrow and the Faith Militant was justified or otherwise satisfying, because her imprisonment and walk of atonement attempted to provoke sympathy from the audience. Now, Jaime's story is certainly detoured a bit in Season 5 in Game of Thrones compared to that of his book counterpart. But in the fourth book, A Feast for Crows, we finally start to see Jaime internalize his past and attempt to envision a more honorable future. So much of this is possible due to the way his character interacted with Brienne in the prior book, A Storm of Swords. The show does a pretty good job of adapting the spirit of their relationship in Season 3 and into Season 4 when Jaime arms Brienne and provides her Oathkeeper to find Sansa and Arya. Brienne is a proxy for Jaime to uphold his vow to Catelyn Stark. However, Jaime doesn't initially come back to King's Landing an entirely changed man. He still has his attachment to Cersei, which you could argue has been a guiding force for much, if not all, of his moral sins. But something happens in A Storm of Swords that creates a shift in Jaime's perspective of Cersei. If you are unaware of the Tysha Confession, read the books or Google it, but the TLDR version is that Tyrion was once married to a girl named Tysha, who Tyrion and Jaime saved from being attacked. Tyrion and Tysha fall in love and were later married. However, Tywin tells Tyrion that Tysha was actually a paid whore, and the whole thing was a setup by Jaime to make Tyrion a man. There's some additional vile acts that occur with this as well, but the key point is that Tyrion was convinced that his marriage was simply a lie, that Tysha never truly loved him, and was simply paid to pretend that she did. In the books, when Jaime helps Tyrion escape, he confesses to Tyrion that Tysha was actually not a paid whore, and that the marriage was real. Their father, Tywin, felt the marriage was a disgrace and simply lied to Tyrion about the whole thing for years. I have a much larger video dedicated to Tyrion that gets into this, and I'll put a link in the description. But in regards to Jaime, something really important happens here. Furious by the reveal that Jaime had lied to him, Tyrion tells Jaime that Cersei has been intimate with Lancel Lannister and Osmond Kettleblack and Moonboy for all he knows. Now this might seem like Tyrion just trying to hurt his brother in a heated moment, but this sticks with Jaime throughout the books from this point forward. Often when interacting with Cersei or even just thinking of her, Jaime references to himself, "She's been fucking Lancel and Osmond Kettleblack and Moonboy for all I know." This creates a separation for Jaime, but also Cersei's behavior has begun to shift toward Jaime, and I think it's very important to recognize the similarities in Cersei's paranoia to that of the Mad King Aerys Targaryen, as well as this fascination with wildfire. There's a moment in A Feast for Crows where Jaime becomes uncomfortable with Cersei's choice to burn the Tower of the Hand with wildfire and her satisfaction in watching it burn. I think these similarities are very important as we consider Jaime's arc and some thematic similarities to Jaime's history. I know some fans of the show and books believe that Daenerys' Mad Queen turn in Season 8 was hinted at early on in the books and show, but I believe that this is simply due to the fact that we are ignoring the blatant parallels of the description of Aerys Targaryen's actions and attachment to wildfire and what we experience with Cersei in A Feast for Crows. If there's a Mad Queen in A Song of Ice and Fire, I think the smart money will be on the character who takes pleasure in watching things burn with wildfire. I don't even think this is subtle. The text is screaming at us the parallels of Cersei and the Mad King. Cersei even suggests that Howling, the pyromancer, could serve as Hand of the King, and for those keeping score, the last hand of Mad King Aerys Targaryen, Lord Rosert, was the Grand Master of the Alchemist Guild, a pyromancer who burned Lord Rickard Stark alive and who helped orchestrate the Mad King's plot to burn King's Landing with wildfire before they were both killed by Jaime Lannister. You see, to get back to the point of Jaime leaving Brienne and going back to Cersei, I think this makes a lot of sense. Now, does it make sense without all of the context from the books? Maybe not. In the books, I believe Jaime has a story that begins and ends with Cersei. Where Jaime's honor will be lost or found really seems to be contingent on what he decides to do if confronted by Cersei's possible Mad Queen arc, where I don't know if romance is actually at play between him and Brienne as much as a growing and mutual admiration. I think the text in the books shows Jaime and Brienne in the beginning of each of their journeys to becoming evolved and reshaped by their intertwined moral dilemmas. Jaime is not who he was before Brienne, and at the same time, Brienne has been confronted with the idea that her belief of what is honorable and what a true knight should be may not be as simple as she once thought because of understanding Jaime's story. I think narratively, it makes a lot less sense for Jaime and Brienne to end up together in the story's conclusion, and I do think it makes sense for him then to go back to Cersei, not because he and Cersei will live happily ever after, or that he'll save her from Daenerys. Instead, I believe the only true way to conclude Jaime's story is by having a final confrontation with his sister. All of his bad deeds are tied to Cersei, his best deed, saving King's Landing from the Mad King. The latter decision has cost him his perceived honor, yet in the books, he believes he can rewrite his story and be remembered as Golden Hand the Just. But I think this establishes him in repeating his history a bit. As he doesn't want to be remembered as the Kingslayer, he might ultimately go back to Cersei, and like he did with the Mad King, he will have to sacrifice his perceived honor and save the city from being burned with wildfire by a Mad Queen. Though I don't know that Cersei will truly be queen, but she will be his sister who believes her younger brother will ultimately kill her someday due to the Maggie the Frog prophecy. Of course, this isn't mentioned in the show, only the death of her children is prophesied, but many believe that this prophecy has misguided Cersei, and in truth, the brother who will kill her is actually Jaime, where she believes it is Tyrion. And I believe this makes much more thematic sense. Jaime will finally rid himself of the title Kingslayer and replace it not with Golden Hand the Just, but as history repeats itself, Jaime's good deed will be punished, and killing Cersei to save King's Landing will result in Jaime being remembered as the Kinslayer. So, did Game of Thrones get it right? I think the answer based on my theories is sorta. I think he'll go back. I just think it's going to be a very different version of what we saw in the show Game of Thrones. Now, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving the video a like and subscribing to the channel so you can watch more just like it. Or you can click one of these videos right here.